In the middle of a dry, burning desert, there was a secret American base hidden between the mountains. Inside that base, soldiers prepared for missions every day. But today was different. Everyone knew the mission that just came down was a dangerous one. No one wanted it. The village they had to enter was known for traps, snipers, and ambushes. It was enemy territory, and most teams never returned from there. Still, the order came. A group of elite Navy SEALs had to move in and find an enemy weapons truck hidden deep in the village. They needed someone to cover them from a high point. A sniper who could watch over the team, guide them and protect them. Many soldiers looked down, avoiding eye contact with the commander. No one wanted to be that sniper, not this time. And then a voice spoke, strong and calm. "I'll go," said Chief Petty Officer Riley Hale. Everyone turned. Riley was not just any sniper. She was the only female SEAL sniper in her unit. She had cold nerves, perfect vision, and a record of never missing a target. Some called her the Ice Hawk, silent, sharp, and deadly. But this mission? Even she knew it was suicide. The commander paused, looked her in the eyes, and asked, "Are you sure?" Riley nodded, her jaw tight. "They need eyes, I've got them," she said. Picking up her rifle that night, under the cover of darkness, the team moved out. The village looked quiet from a distance, but Riley knew better. She climbed up the tallest building near the edge of the village. Dust blew in the wind. The sun slowly setting behind her from the rooftop. She had a clear view of the narrow streets, the broken walls, and the shadows below. The team entered the village like shadows, moving silently through the alleys. Riley watched every corner through her scope. Her finger rested near the trigger. Her heartbeat steady, the earpiece in her ear crackled. "Raven 9, do you copy?" A voice whispered. "Copy," Riley replied. "You're clear to move 2 blocks. Stop near the blue door." She gave them directions, warned them of possible movement. Her eyes missed nothing. But something didn't feel right. The silence was too deep, the streets too empty. Riley scanned the rooftops across from her. Then she saw it, just for a second, a reflection of light, a sniper scope. She fired instantly, shattering the glass and hitting the enemy before he even aimed. "Contact," she whispered. "They know you're here." Gunfire exploded from both sides of the street. The SEAL team rushed to find cover. Returning fire, Riley provided overwatch, taking down 3 enemies trying to flank her team. But they kept coming, wave after wave, and then static. The radio went silent. Riley's eyes widened. "Bravo team? Respond," she said. No answer, only the sound of gunfire, then nothing. She tried again. "Bravo, this is Raven 9. Do you copy?" Still silence. Her fingers gripped the radio tight. Her team had vanished behind enemy lines. And now, so had her lifeline. She looked around, suddenly aware of how alone she was. The streets below were swarming with fighters, and now they knew someone was on the rooftops. They were looking for her. Her heart beat faster, but her face stayed calm. She lowered her body, crawled to a new position, and took a deep breath. "I am not dying here," she whispered to herself. But deep down, even Riley knew. She was now trapped, cut off from her team, surrounded by enemies, and, worst of all, no one at base knew she was still alive. The sky turned dark. The wind grew cold. She lay flat on the rooftop, her finger still on the trigger. She had one job, survive, but in that moment, under the stars and silence, even the best sniper in the world began to wonder, will anyone come for me? Darkness had covered the village like a thick blanket. Only the orange glow of distant fires lit the broken streets. Chief Riley Hale lay flat on a concrete rooftop, her rifle pressed against her shoulder. The rooftop was cracked and dusty, just like everything else around her. The wind carried the smell of smoke and sweat, and somewhere below enemy fighters were moving, searching. Riley's fingers hovered over the small black radio clipped to her vest. "Bravo team, this is Raven 9, she whispered. "Check in." Nothing, only static. Again she tried, her voice tight but calm. "Bravo, do you copy?" Still silence. She closed her eyes for 1 second and listened harder. The silence screamed louder than any bullet. She scanned the streets through her scope. Shadows moved fast across the sand-colored walls. They weren't American. She could tell by how they walked, hunched low with rusty rifles in hand. They were looking for someone. They were looking for her. Her mind went back to 20 minutes ago. Gunfire had erupted like thunder from the far side of the village. She saw her team pinned down near a crumbling archway. She shot cover fire from above, dropping 3 enemies in less than 10 seconds. Then, silence, no voices, no signals, just a distant scream. Then nothing. Riley had stayed in her position, waiting, watching, praying. She kept trying the radio every few minutes. But it was like calling ghosts, no voices ever came back. She reached into her pouch and pulled out a tiny notebook. She scribbled the time, her position, and a note. Last contact lost. Bravo may be down. She didn't know if she'd get to hand it to anyone. But she had to write it anyway. That's what snipers did. Record the truth. Even when no one was left to hear it. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. She hadn't eaten in over 24 hours. The water pouch on her belt was almost empty. Still, her hands were steady, because panic was not an option. Not for a sniper, not for her. Then she heard it. Footsteps on the staircase, slow and heavy. Someone was coming up to the roof. She pointed her rifle at the door, barely breathing. 1 second passed, then another. The door creaked open. She fired. The body dropped without a sound. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her hands didn't shake. She dragged the man's body behind a water tank. Another local fighter. He had a map in his pocket. Riley snatched it and scanned it quickly. A red circle marked her building. They knew more would come soon. She couldn't stay here. She needed to move, but where? The streets below were crawling with hostiles. And she had no backup, no evac, no eyes in the sky. Still, she didn't hesitate. Riley took her rifle, slung it over her back, and climbed down the fire escape. Each step was slow, each breath measured. At the bottom, she darted across the alley and into the next building. She paused behind a broken wall, listening. She spotted a little boy peeking from a window above. Dirty face, wide eyes. He pointed toward the east gate, then vanished. Riley nodded to herself. Maybe someone still had a soul in this place. She headed east, low and fast, sticking to the shadows. Suddenly, voices shouted behind her. Gunfire tore through the air, bullets smashing into bricks and metal. She rolled behind a dumpster, pulled out her rifle, and returned fire. 2 enemies fell, the others ducked. She ran. She didn't stop until her legs burned and her throat felt like sand. Finally, she slipped into a collapsed shop. Hidden beneath a broken sign, she checked her gear. 5 bullets left. 1 bottle cap of water, no more food, and worst of all, still no radio signal. She whispered into the mic again. Raven 9 to base, come in. Anyone. The static was quieter now, but still empty. She leaned back against the wall, covered in dust and sweat. The village had gone quiet again, too quiet. She stared at the sky through a hole in the ceiling. So many stars, so peaceful, so far away from this nightmare. Then she closed her eyes and whispered to herself, If this is where I die, I'll die standing. But deep inside, a question echoed in her mind. Does anyone even know I'm still alive? The night air was cold, sharp, and dry. Chief Riley Hale crouched in the corner of a ruined shop, her rifle resting across her knees. Her breathing was slow but uneven. Her throat burned from thirst. The smell of gunpowder and dust filled the room.
She hadn't spoken a word for hours, only whispered to herself to stay calm.
It had been 3 days since she lost radio contact with her team. 3 long, endless days of silence, smoke and fear. The first day she had hope. The second day she started to doubt. And now on the third she knew she was completely alone. The food she had was gone. Her water was down to the last sip. Her ammo, 5 rounds, then 4, then 3. Each bullet was more precious than gold. Each one was a promise that she would not give up quietly. She tried the radio again. Raven 9 to command, do you read me? Static answered. The same cold silence that had haunted her every night since the ambush. She looked at her reflection in a broken mirror beside her. Her face was pale, lips cracked, dirt and blood mixed on her cheeks. Her blue eyes looked different now, harder, emptier. She smiled weakly at herself. You still look alive, she whispered. So keep fighting. Riley pushed open the back door and stepped into the alley. It was dawn now. A pale orange glow touched the edges of the rooftops. The enemy fighters had pulled back during the night. Maybe they thought she was already dead. That mistake was going to keep her breathing a little longer. She moved through the narrow streets like a ghost. Each step slow, careful. She knew the terrain by now, every alley, every broken wall, every safe shadow. But she also knew she was running out of places to hide. She needed food, water, and a plan. And all she had were 3 bullets and a radio that didn't work. Then she saw him. A young enemy scout, barely older than a teenager. walking with a rifle slung over his shoulder. He was humming softly to himself, not knowing death was only 20 feet away. Riley froze, raised her rifle, and took aim. But something in her heart hesitated. He was just a kid. Then the boy turned suddenly. His eyes met hers. Wide and shocked, he shouted, reaching for his gun. Riley fired. The echo of the shot bounced off the walls. The boy dropped instantly. Riley's chest tightened, her stomach twisted. She lowered her rifle and whispered, "I didn't want to." Her voice broke. But war didn't care who you wanted to save. She searched his pockets and a small canteen. Half full, she opened it and drank, the water warm but life-saving. She found a piece of bread wrapped in cloth, hard and dry but enough to keep her standing. For a few seconds, she just stood there. Staring at the rising sun, she wanted to cry, but no tears came. Her heart had learned to stay quiet. Her soul had learned to keep moving by noon. She found shelter again in a burned-out house. She used a torn curtain as shade and sat near a cracked window. Her hands trembled as she cleaned her rifle, her last line of defense. Every sound outside made her heart skip. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. Then gunfire. Riley closed her eyes. "If they find me, I'll make them work for it," she whispered. She checked her bullets. 2 left. She smiled bitterly. 2 more chances to breathe, she muttered. The hours passed slowly. Her body was weak, but her spirit was iron. She thought of her team, the laughter in the helicopter, the jokes before the mission, and she thought of her commander. Lieutenant Maddox, he had trusted her. She couldn't die here, not like this, not without trying then. As the sun dipped low again, the radio crackled. It was faint, a broken whisper buried under static. Her heart jumped. She pressed the button fast. "This is Raven 9, say again." "Over." The voice came again, weak but real. "Raven, copy." "Raven 9, come in." Her eyes filled with hope. I copy," she shouted. "This is Chief Hale, I'm alive." "Do you hear me?" Static swallowed the signal. She hit the radio, desperate. "Please, come back," she whispered. But the sound was gone. Still, for the first time in days, her heart felt alive again. Someone had spoken. Someone had said her call sign. Someone out there knew she existed. She clutched the radio tight against her chest. Eyes closed. "I'm here," she whispered to the night. "I'm still here." Then she looked down at her rifle, 1 bullet in the chamber. 1 in her pocket, she smiled sadly. "The last bullet is not for them," she murmured. "It's for hope." She loaded her gun, checked her gear, and looked toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, someone had called her name. And that was enough to keep her moving again. The darkness crept in around her. But this time she didn't hide, she walked into it, whispering the same words over and over. "I'm still alive, and I'm not done yet." At the U.S. Forward Operations Base, deep in the desert, everything had slowed down. The mood was heavy, like a dark cloud hung over the camp. Soldiers moved quietly. Medics glanced at the ground when they passed. Everyone had heard the same thing. Bravo team was gone. And with them, Chief Petty Officer Riley Hale, the best sniper they had. She had been missing for 3 days. No signal, no satellite ping, not even a distress flare. Command wrote her off as KIA, killed in action. A small folder with her name was placed in a drawer marked "Pending Recovery." To the military machine, it was routine. To her commander, Lieutenant Maddox, it was unacceptable. Maddox sat in a dim tent, staring at a satellite map filled with red lines and broken trails. His eyes were tired, but they burned with something deeper. Refusal. He had trained Riley personally. He had seen her shoot through a bottle cap from 600 meters. He had seen her drag a wounded Marine through a storm of bullets. And he had seen her laugh at death more than once. "She's not dead," he whispered to himself. "Not her." He stood and marched toward the intelligence tent. "I need every signal sweep from the last 12 hours, he said. Voice hard as steel, the tech specialist blinked. "Sir?" "She's presumed." "Presumed by who?" Maddox snapped, "Give me the tapes." An hour later, he heard it, a faint signal, broken, garbled, but real, a voice hidden inside static. "Raven 9, come in." His heart slammed against his ribs. "That's her," he whispered, pointing at the screen. "That's Hale." The tech leaned closer. "Could be interference from another patrol." "No," Maddox said firmly. "She used her call sign." He rushed outside, eyes scanning the horizon like he could see her through the mountains. He pressed his comm unit. "Cancel the file." Cancel the death tag, he ordered. We've got a heartbeat. Across the base, news spread like a spark. Riley Hale might be alive, some whispered in disbelief. Some prayed, others quietly smiled because they had always felt it too. She was a fighter. And fighters like her don't go down easy. But protocol didn't care about gut feelings. Command said no rescue mission could be approved without hard confirmation. Rules, paperwork, signatures. Maddox stared at the forms and then tore them in half. If the system won't bring her home, he growled. Then we will. He called in a favor from Special Forces Team 6, a shadow unit that didn't answer to paperwork, 6 men who moved like ghosts. Each one had fought beside Riley at some point. Each one owed her something. When Maddox explained the plan, none of them blinked. Where is she? Their team leader asked. Maddox pointed at the map. Here, or close to it. The leader nodded. Then we go tonight. While the rest of the base shut down for the night, the 6 men suited up in silence, black gear, silent rifles, eyes sharp with purpose. They didn't speak much. There was nothing left to say. They weren't going in for glory. They weren't going in for orders. They were going in for her just before takeoff. Maddox handed the team leader a small photo. It was Riley, smiling, holding her sniper rifle with one hand and flashing a peace sign with the other. She saved me in Kandahar, Maddox said softly. Bring her home. The helicopter lifted off into the night sky, its blades slicing through the air like whispers. Below, the desert stretched endlessly, hiding its secrets beneath layers of darkness and silence. But now something had changed. Someone had heard her voice, and someone was coming back in the intelligence tent. The tech ran another sweep, and there it was again, faint but real. I'm still here. Raven 9 out. The tech turned to the screen. Lieutenant, he whispered into the mic. That's her again, same location. Maddox smiled. A slow burning smile. Good, he said. Because so are we, in that moment. Far away across enemy lines, Riley lay under a broken ceiling, her radio still pressed against her chest. She didn't know if anyone had heard her. She didn't know if her voice meant anything anymore. But she repeated the same words into the mic. Soft, steady, certain, this is Raven 9. I'm still alive. The desert wind blew hard as the night deepened. Stars sparkled above like cold eyes watching the land below. But 6 shadows moved silently through the darkness. Dressed in black, faces painted with mud, hearts focused on one mission. They were Special Forces Team 6, and tonight, they weren't following orders. They were answering a whisper, a broken signal. And that whisper came from a woman everyone thought was dead. The mission was called Phantom Echo. No papers, no permission. No medals waiting at the end, just a promise. She saved us once, said their leader, Master Sergeant Colbeck. Now we save her. The helicopter had dropped them 20 kilometers from the village. Too risky to land closer. The area was full of enemy eyes, so they moved on foot, through dry riverbeds, narrow canyons and broken ruins. Every second counted if Riley Hale was still alive. She wouldn't last much longer. Beck held the map in his hand, satellite images, notes from Lieutenant Maddox, and one red circle. That circle was where the last signal came from, near a collapsed shop with a metal roof and burned-out windows. That's where we start, Beck whispered. The team nodded, no questions asked. Each man had fought with Riley somewhere. Each had a reason to bring her home, back at the base. Maddox stared at the satellite feed, watching their heat signatures crawl slowly toward the red zone. He knew it was madness, but something inside him wouldn't let go. Riley Hale was more than just a soldier. She was proof that courage could wear any face. Even the face of a quiet woman who could shoot the wings off a fly. Beck and his team moved deeper into the ruins. They avoided patrols, stepped over tripwires, and whispered only when needed. At one point, they paused under a stone archway. Beck held up his hand, a sound, a low, crackling voice coming from a hidden radio tower nearby. The tech guy of the group, Danner, pulled out his receiver. He listened, adjusted the frequency, and suddenly froze. She's broadcasting, he whispered. Faint, but it's her. Beck leaned in. The words were soft and slow but clear. This is Raven 9. I am still alive. The team exchanged looks, hope lit their eyes like fire. She's alive, Beck whispered. Let's go get her. The last few streets were dangerous. Fighters were everywhere, guarding, watching, smoking, waiting. The village had grown darker than ever, but the team knew how to move like wind. They split into pairs and flanked from 3 sides. Every second, Beck imagined Riley behind a broken wall, weak and bleeding, still holding on, still fighting, still waiting. Then they found it. The building from the map. It was half collapsed, the door twisted off its hinges. The air smelled like metal, gunpowder, and blood. Beck held his breath as he pushed forward. Rifle ready? He stepped inside slowly, carefully. And there, she was curled up near a shattered window. Her uniform torn, hair dirty, face pale, but her eyes were open, her hands clutching a rifle. She turned, blinking, unsure if she was seeing ghosts. Beck dropped to one knee and said, "Chief Hale." "It's us." Riley stared at him in shock. Her dry lips parted, but no words came out at first. Then in a broken whisper, "You came." Beck smiled. "Of course we came," he said, pulling out water and wrapping her in a thermal blanket. "You thought we'd forget about you?" Tears slipped down her dusty cheeks. But she laughed, weak, rough, but real. Her hands shook as she reached for the water bottle. Danner gently helped her drink. Another soldier checked her pulse and wounds. "You're a damn miracle, Hale," one of them said. Riley shook her head slowly. "No, I just kept moving." Suddenly outside, movement voices shouting the enemy had spotted them. "Time to go," Beck ordered, lifting Riley onto his back. She tried to stand, but her legs gave out. "No shame in it," Beck said softly. "You carried enough." Gunfire erupted as the team pushed out. Bullets hit walls, sparks flew. The soldiers returned fire with deadly precision. Riley gripped her rifle even as she lay over Beck's shoulders. She fired one shot. It hit its mark. "Still got it," she whispered with a grin. They ran through the maze of alleys as smoke filled the air. Then a signal. The evac chopper was near. The sound of its blades was like thunder from heaven. They raced toward the open field. Hearts pounding one by one, the team climbed aboard. Beck placed Riley down gently and gave a thumbs up to the pilot. "We got her," he said. "Go." As the helicopter lifted into the night sky, Riley lay back and looked out the door. The village grew smaller, the stars above brighter. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I knew someone would come, and finally, finally." The words came through her radio. "Welcome back. Raven 9. The helicopter rose slowly into the night sky. Dust and smoke spun around its spinning blades inside. Chief Riley Hale lay against the cold floor, wrapped in a thin blanket. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. She was safe now, but far from okay. Her muscles were weak, her eyes half closed, and every inch of her body ached, but she was alive. And after 6 days behind enemy lines, that was more than enough. Master Sergeant Cole Beck knelt beside her. He checked her pulse again, even though he'd already checked it 3 times. He just needed to feel that rhythm, proof that she hadn't slipped away. "You're good," he whispered. "Stay with us now." Riley gave him the smallest nod. "I'm not going anywhere," she muttered, her voice barely there below them. The village disappeared into the shadows, but the enemy hadn't given up. A small militia convoy had spotted the chopper and was already moving. Trucks loaded with weapons, men shouting orders into radios. Their goal was clear: shoot down the bird before it made it out of the red zone. Back in the cockpit, the pilot, call sign Falcon, cursed under his breath. "We've got company," he said. Looking at the radar, 2 trucks, high speed. "They're gaining." Beck stood, gripping a handrail as the chopper rocked slightly in the wind. "ETA to green airspace?" he asked. 6 minutes, Falcon answered. "If we make it, 6 minutes, 6 minutes until they were clear. 6 minutes until Riley was out of enemy range. 6 minutes of survival." Behind the chopper, a flash lit the sky. A rocket launched from one of the trucks. It whistled through the air like a screaming curse. Falcon yanked the controls and the chopper dipped hard to the left. The rocket exploded just behind them. A burst of fire and shockwave. Inside, everyone was thrown sideways, Riley gasped, her body sliding toward the door until Beck caught her. "Hold on," he shouted, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Don't worry," she whispered with a faint smirk. "I've been through worse." Beck turned to the others. "Get on the guns," he barked. "Let's give 'em a reason to regret chasing us." 2 soldiers moved to the side hatches and manned the machine guns. The night lit up with tracers as they returned fire. Bullets tore into the convoy below, one truck skidding off the road. But the second truck kept coming. Its gunner aimed another rocket. Falcon yelled, "We need to climb now or we're toast." But climbing meant slowing down. Just enough time for the rocket to catch them. Beck made a decision. "Open the rear ramp," he said. The team hesitated. "What are you doing?" one asked. "Giving them a distraction," Beck growled. The rear ramp dropped with a hydraulic hiss. Wind roared inside the cabin. Beck grabbed a flare gun and sprinted to the edge. He fired 3 red flares into the sky, fast, bright, and wild. The rocket locked onto the heat and flew upward, chasing the false target. It exploded harmlessly in the air. Cheers filled the cabin, but it wasn't over. A third truck appeared from the west, mounted with a heavy machine gun. The bullets it fired were meant to tear through armor. One round punched a hole in the side of the chopper, sparks flying. Another grazed the shoulder of a soldier near Riley. He groaned but held his ground. Still firing, Riley forced herself to sit up. Even though her ribs screamed, she grabbed the wounded soldier's rifle, took aim through the side opening. Her hands were shaking, her vision blurry, but her training never left her. One shot, then another, then a third. The gunner on the truck dropped. The vehicle swerved and slammed into a wall. Bursting into flames inside the chopper, silence fell for a brief second. Then someone whispered, "Did she just—" Beck looked back, eyes wide. "Yeah," he said, smiling with pride. "She's still Raven 9. The helicopter crossed into green airspace moments later. Enemy fire stopped like it had hit an invisible wall. They were safe now, no more rockets, no more trucks, no more death crawling behind them. The crew slumped into their seats. Adrenaline crashing, Riley leaned her head back, eyes fluttering shut. Beck knelt beside her again. "You did good, Chief," he said softly. She opened one eye. "I just hate bad aim," she whispered. Before passing out an hour later, they landed at the base. Medics ran to the helicopter, stretchers ready. Maddox was already waiting. When he saw her being carried off the bird, he stepped forward, eyes filled with something close to tears. "She's alive," one of the team said. Maddox nodded. "Damn right she is." And as they rolled Riley into the medical tent, her radio slipped from her vest. It was still on, still cracked, still alive. The last message it had played was a whisper. "Raven 9, still breathing." The hum of the helicopter faded as its rotors slowed. Dust swirled in the floodlights, lighting up the landing zone like a scene from a dream. Soldiers ran toward the bird, medics in white gloves and green vests shouting orders. Stretchers rolled, boots stomped, radios buzzed. But in the middle of the chaos, all eyes turned to one figure. Chief Petty Officer Riley Hale, wrapped in a thermal blanket, eyes half closed, lips dry and cracked. She didn't look like a warrior right now. She looked like a ghost who had crawled out of death's hands and made it back home. 2 medics lifted her gently from the chopper floor. She groaned softly, but her hand still clutched the radio that had saved her life. Standing at the edge of the crowd was Lieutenant Maddox. He had been waiting there for hours. He hadn't slept, hadn't eaten. He only watched the radar, waiting for the signal that meant the bird was back. When he saw her, his breath caught in his throat. "She's alive," he whispered, barely able to believe it himself. He took a slow step forward, then another. She turned her head just enough to see him. A tired smile tugged at her lips. "Told you I wasn't done," she whispered. Maddox chuckled through the tightness in his chest. "Yeah," he said softly. "You're damn hard to kill." Inside the medical tent, the doctors worked fast. They cleaned her wounds, checked for infections, and started fluids. She had lost weight, lost blood, and lost time. But not once did she lose her will. Even as the IV needle slid into her skin, she asked, "How many days was I out there?" "6, said the medic. "You lasted 6 days. Riley nodded slowly. "That's 1 day longer than my worst." Outside the tent, soldiers stood in groups. Some stared in silence, others whispered. They had seen the mission go out. They had seen the list of the dead, and now, one of the names had come back to life. "She's alive," one soldier said to another. The word spread across the base like wildfire. "She made it back. No way. Raven 9? That sniper girl?" "Yeah, that's her." For some, it brought hope. For others, it brought questions. But for all of them, it brought respect. Because no one survives what Riley Hale just did. Unless they're made of something different. Something stronger. Later that night, the Special Forces team who rescued her gathered outside the medical tent. They didn't ask for medals, they didn't give speeches. They just stood there, arms crossed. Watching over the woman who had once saved each of them, Beck looked through the glass, saw Riley sitting up with a blanket around her shoulders. She was holding a small notebook, scribbling something down. "What's she writing?" asked one of the soldiers. Beck shrugged. "Probably her report." "She's crazy, yeah." Beck smiled. Crazy enough to live. Inside, Maddox finally sat beside her bed. He looked at her tired face and the IV in her arm. And yet her eyes still held that same fire. You had us scared, Hale, he said. You didn't think I'd quit, did you? She replied, her voice dry but sharp. Never, Maddox said, leaning back. But command did. Riley looked down at her blanket. I heard nothing for days, she said. No voices, no backup. I thought I was gone. But then I heard one voice. Maddox nodded slowly. That was Beck, he said. He picked up your signal. Tell him thanks, Riley whispered. Tell them all. Maddox stood, reached into his pocket, and placed something on her bedside table. It was a folded American flag, crisp, clean, untouched. They were going to send this to your mother, he said quietly. Good thing I stopped them. Riley stared at it, her eyes shining. That's heavy, she said. Maddox nodded. So are legends. The next morning, the base held a small gathering in the mess hall. No speeches, no cameras. Just quiet hands on shoulders and firm nods. Riley walked in slowly, a crutch under one arm. The room went silent. Then one soldier stood, then another. Then the entire room rose to their feet. They didn't cheer, they didn't clap, they just stood, tall, proud, silent. Because some heroes don't need music or medals. Some just need to be seen. And in that moment, Chief Riley Hale knew. She wasn't just alive, she was remembered. She was respected, and she was home. Weeks had passed since the day Chief Riley Hale returned from the jaws of death. The bruises on her body had faded, but the marks on her soul still whispered in the quiet moments. Every night she woke up before dawn, drenched in sweat, hands clenched. But every morning she stood up anyway. She didn't come back just to rest. She came back to do something. Inside the rehab wing of the base, soldiers nodded as she passed. New recruits watched her in silence, eyes filled with awe. To them, she was no longer just a sniper. She was a living story, a walking, breathing answer to the question, what if I don't give up? Her superiors offered her an honorable discharge. They said she had nothing left to prove. They said she could go home, rest, live a quiet life. But Riley shook her head and smiled. I didn't come back just to sit, she said. I came back to stand for something. So she stayed, but not behind a rifle. She moved to the training field every morning. She stood before a line of young soldiers. She spoke in a calm, steady voice. Don't train to survive, she said. Train to matter. She taught them how to move through shadows, how to stay calm when bullets fly, how to think with their minds and fight with their hearts, but most importantly, she taught them the one thing she never let go of. Never leave anyone behind in the evenings. She walked alone to the memorial wall. There, she traced the names of the Bravo team, the ones who didn't make it out. She whispered their names one by one, not just as soldiers, but as friends. She lit a candle beneath each name and sat there until the flame burned low. Some nights she cried. Some nights she said nothing. But she always returned the next day. Maddox often joined her, sitting beside her without speaking. He knew the silence between them said more than any words could. He had fought to bring her home, now she was fighting to give her return a purpose. One afternoon, a visiting general arrived at the base. He asked to meet the sniper ghost. They brought him to Riley, who stood in the middle of a dusty field with a group of fresh recruits. She wiped her hands on her cargo pants and saluted. He offered her another medal. She looked at it, then shook her head. Put it in the mess hall, she said. Let them see it when they eat. Not just when they bleed. The general paused, then nodded. He understood. This woman wasn't here for medals. She was here for meaning. One day, a young private approached her, nervous and shaking. He said his sister had died in a mission years ago, and no one ever told him how she fought. He asked Riley, what do you think she would have wanted to be remembered for? Riley smiled gently and said, not how she died, kid, but what she stood for while she lived. Riley later wrote a small handbook, not a rule book, but a guide. It wasn't about combat moves or weapon specs. It was about fear, silence, grit, and grace. She called it Echoes from the Rooftop. It began with a single line. I wasn't brave because I was fearless. I was brave because I kept going anyway. Copies were passed around the military quietly. Soldiers read it under flashlights, in bunkers, on helicopters, and in faraway tents. Her words became whispers in the wind, and for many, they became armor for the heart years later. A new sniper stood on a rooftop in a foreign country. She was young, sharp, and scared. Enemy patrols circled below. Her hand shook as she held her rifle. Then, she pulled a small notebook from her pocket, old and worn. On the first page was Riley's name and the words, "If no one comes for you, survive anyway. Someone out there is running toward you. That young sniper made it home." She never met Riley in person, but Riley's voice had been there when the world went silent. Back at the base, Riley never stopped teaching, even when her knees hurt, even when the nights were long, because she had made a promise to those who didn't make it back. She would carry their memory forward. She would turn survival into legacy, and every time someone asked her, "Why didn't you quit?" she would look them in the eye and say, "Because someone out there might be waiting, just like I was."